Good morning, Nora, and thank you so much for joining us to speak about the Alzheimer Society of Ireland pre-budget submission. There's lots of people in the virtual room this morning who know you as a councillor, as a TD, as a government minister, as deputy leader of Fine Gael. In the Alzheimer Society, we know you as all that, but also as a family carer. So I'd like to begin by asking you to tell us a little bit about your husband, Brian, who lived with dementia and sadly died last November, and why you and Brian chose to be open about dementia.
Good morning, Clodagh, and thank you for the introduction. Yes, Brian was diagnosed about 14 years ago now with dementia. And so for 12 of those years, he stayed at home with me. I cared for him at home. He got some outside help. He went to a day centre once a week, but mostly it was me and the family that looked after him. And at a certain stage, I began to realise that I was hiding away as well from telling people that Brian had dementia, because I didn't want them to be looking at him and saying, oh, that's the man with dementia. But one day I happened to be doing a radio interview, and for some reason I said straight out, I'm looking after my husband who has dementia. And I just felt that it was the right thing to say. And it started a procedure whereby people began to ask me to talk about it publicly. And I knew it was the right thing to do. Not enough of us who are carers talk about it publicly. It's not easy to talk about. And therefore, the stigma, the hidden, I think you called it the forgotten crisis, stays hidden. And therefore, maybe governments and politicians don't always take note of the needs of people with dementia and the needs of the carers, the 500,000 or so people who are caring for somebody with dementia. So in a way, I suppose I took that decision myself. Brian wasn't probably as aware that I was going to go public, but it didn't make a big difference to him. We just got on with our life. And since then, in the last 3 to 4 years, I have done quite a lot of public pronouncements and public interviews about people with dementia. And I think people have said to me it has helped them.
It really helps because, as you say, we take away the stigma every time we talk about living with dementia and supporting a person living with dementia. Of course, we're here this morning to talk about the Alzheimer Society pre-budget submission. And a large part of that submission is capital investment required for day centres all over Ireland. There's communities throughout the country who have day centres that cannot reopen because of that lack of funding. And I'd really be interested in what you think about that and why it's so necessary.
Well, I noticed during the pandemic, the COVID, a number of the services that were available to people with dementia and to their carers had to close down. We had a small service here where I live in Malahide, a day centre once a week, and it was wonderful. 10 people got an opportunity to go to the day centre. Their carers got an opportunity to have a few hours off. We had to close that centre. The Alzheimer Society felt it wasn't safe to have those centres open. And now that things are beginning to open up again, there's a big gap in the provision of centres. And the Alzheimer Society is trying very hard to get a centre in as many communities as possible opened up. It requires trained people who can run them. It requires a location where perhaps rent has to be paid. It requires services like maybe Meals on Wheels and other services for the people with dementia. And so there is a cost involved. And I think that without those centres, more and more people will suffer. The people with dementia won't get the extra socializing that they need from going to these centres, and their carers will, quite frankly, get fully worn out. I know how easy it is to get worn out when you're caring for somebody, because almost every week something new is happening to somebody with dementia. One week they're very happy to have a shower. The next week they won't get into the shower. So another whole set of services and needs arise. So the money that Alzheimer's are looking for is absolutely crucial to get those centres up and running.
You've captured it beautifully there, you know, the joyful activities and stimulation for the person living with dementia. and of course that break from caring for the family member at home, because their
Mm,
well-being is so interlinked, as we know.
yes.
There's a lot of politicians and your former colleagues in the virtual room this morning, and I suppose, to finish, what would you say directly to them about what they can do to help people living with dementia and supporting people with dementia?
Well, I send my warm greetings to all my former colleagues, or they're now real colleagues in the Dáil and Senate, and I say hello to them all, no matter what party you're in. I would imagine that a large number of you watching have personal experience of somebody in their family with dementia, or maybe just starting on the road to dementia, maybe just a little bit of forgetfulness coming in, and the family is beginning to discuss, how do we look after mother, how do we look after father, how do we look after our grandparents. And so there probably isn't one of you that doesn't have some kind of experience. So the more you raise this issue, the more you raise it with the ministers, with the purse strings, the better it will be, because you are helping to remove some of the stigma, and you are also perhaps making sure that an amount of money is made available for these community centres particularly. It's not a big ask. I mean, I know the Alzheimer's has put in for a 29 million budget, but that is a very small amount of money when you consider the amount of money that gets spent on so many other areas of public life. And I would just say to all of you as colleagues, don't be afraid to go to your relevant minister. Don't be afraid to tell them maybe that you have a personal experience of somebody who can't get the care that they need, and to ask for that money to be made available. Last year, there was 13 million made available, and the Alzheimer Society was very grateful for that, and it helped to increase the number of Alzheimer's advisors around the country, dementia advisors that will help people when they realise that one of their loved ones is going into that dementia range. So now is your opportunity. Just put aside some of your other asks and make this ask your big ask to the minister. It's the Minister for Health, it's the Minister Paschal Donoghue, Minister Michael McGrath. Just go to them, talk to them privately, and raise it on the floor of the Dáil and on the floor of the Senate, as many of you have done in the past. Now is the time, pre-budget, raise it in the next 2 weeks, and we might see some good success coming from that.
Thank you so much. That's great advice to finish on. Challenge stigma and raise funds. We couldn't have said it better ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.